Japanese games are unlike anything else in the world. They linger, whisper, and crawl under your skin long after you turn off the console. But have you ever wondered why? Why do so many Japanese horror games, from Silent Hill to Fatal Frame and Resident Evil, feel more like spiritual experiences than just games about monsters and blood? In this video, I'm going to explain why Japanese games are reflecting spiritual topics about fear and guilt, and why that makes them some of the most emotionally powerful games ever made. To understand Japanese horror, you have to understand Japan's spiritual DNA. In Western culture, horror often focuses on the external: monsters, demons, serial killers. But in Japan, horror is internal. It's about the mind, the soul, and what happens when something spiritual is disturbed. Japan's traditional religions, Shinto and Buddhism, both play a huge role here. In Shinto, everything in nature has a spirit: trees, rivers, even places and objects. But when those spirits are neglected, wronged, or forgotten, they can become vengeful, turning into onryo, ghosts filled with sorrow or rage. Meanwhile, Buddhism teaches about suffering, guilt, and the cycle of rebirth, how our attachments and regrets can trap us in endless loop of pain. Put those together and you have the foundation for horror that's not about fighting monsters, but about facing what's inside you. What was the first Japanese horror video game? The answer is not entirely clear, because horror elements crept into games in many forms early on. The roots of Japanese horror games go back to the 80s and early 90s, when developers started turning Japan's folklore and ghost stories into digital experiences. One of the earliest examples is Sweet Home in 1989, developed by Capcom for the Famicom. It was based on a Japanese horror film of the same name, and it introduced many ideas that would later inspire Resident Evil. But unlike Western horror games that focus on survival or shooting, Sweet Home centered on exploring a cursed mansion where souls of the dead still lingered, full of regret, vengeance, and spiritual unrest. That's where it began. Fear, not just of death, but of unresolved souls, guilt, and unfinished business. Fast forward to the late 90s. Games like Silent Hill from Konami in 1999 and Fatal Frame from Tecmo 2001 took everything deeper, turning horror into psychological art. In Silent Hill 2, the monsters aren't random enemies. They are manifestations of guilt. Every creature you encounter is a distorted reflection of the protagonist's sins, the things he refuses to face. Pyramid Head isn't just a monster, he is the punishment itself, born from the main character's repressed guilt over his wife's death. The town of Silent Hill becomes a kind of a spiritual mirror, showing each visitor the darkness inside them. Fatal Frame, on the other hand, brings back Shinto's idea of restless spirits. You play as a girl, armed with only a camera obscura, a sacred object that can capture and calm tormented souls. The game's entire mechanic is built around empathy, facing spirits not to destroy them, but to release them from suffering. This is a uniquely Japanese perspective. Ghosts aren't just villains, they are victims. They are bound by emotions, sorrow, guilt, and love, just like the living. In Japanese horror, fear doesn't come from shock, it comes from recognition. You fear what you understand, or what you might have done yourself. That's why guilt plays such a central role. In Western horror, guilt is usually the backstory, something that happened before the story began. In Japanese horror, guilt is the story. The player is often forced to relieve trauma, to uncover the reason behind the curse or haunting. Think of Siren, 2003 by Kichiro Toyama, the same creative mind behind Silent Hill. The game's narrative is built on a spiritual course triggered by human mistakes, acts of fear and desperation that ripple through generations. The horror is not just supernatural, it's moral. One of the most fascinating traits of Japanese games is how ordinary their settings are. A school, an apartment, a village, a family home, these are not Gothic castles or alien spaceships. They are familiar places, made terrifying through spiritual corruption. This connects to another cultural idea, that the boundary between the physical and spiritual world is thin. In Shinto belief, spirits exist all around us, so horror doesn't need to be in graveyard. Games like Parasite Eve, Corpse Party, and The Calling show how easily the supernatural can slip into daily life. Japanese developers use the mundane as a stage for the extraordinary, making horror personal, relatable, and spiritual all at once. Japanese horror is also visually and tonally unique. It's not just about blood, it's about aesthetic dread. There is an elegance to Japanese horror, the way silence, shadow, and music work together to build emotional unease. A flicker of static, a distant hum, a half-seen figure behind the paper screen. Fear is created not by showing too much, but by suggesting too little. This subtlety comes from Japan's long artistic traditions, the Noh theater, haiku, and ink painting, all built on minimalism, ambiguity, and emotional restraint. Developers like Hideo Kojima and Kiichiro Toyama have both said that true horror lies in the imagination, and the imagination is often driven by unresolved emotion, especially guilt. If you're still with me, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to my channel. Definitely stay till the end of the video. Today, Japanese horror continues to explore these spiritual and emotional ideas, but in new ways. In Ghostwire Tokyo 2022, fear and guilt are woven into a city consumed by spirits. The main character's struggle is both physical and spiritual. He must face literal ghosts, but also his own regrets. In Resident Evil Village 2021, though more westernized in tone, you can still sense the Japanese philosophy underneath: family trauma, corruption, and redemption through suffering. And the Silent Hill F, set in 1960s Japan. That's a clear sign that Konami wants to return to the roots, a blend of social anxiety, spiritual decay, and emotional horror. Even indie horror games from Japan like Mad Father, Misao, or The Witch's House all carry the same DNA: tragedy, guilt, and supernatural consequences. Players around the world relate to stories of guilt, regret, and redemption. Japanese horror games have taught global audiences that fear doesn't just live in shadows or monsters, it lives in memory, emotion, and silence. It's the fear of being forgotten, the guilt of hurting someone, the unease that maybe the ghosts we fear are our own reflections. So, why do Japanese developers make horror games so steeped in spiritual fear and guilt? Because for them, horror isn't just entertainment. It's a language, a way to talk about pain, sin, about facing your mistakes instead of running from them, and about reminding us that every action, every choice echoes in the world, even after we're gone. Yet from Christian point of view, these stories reveal something deeper: humanity's longing for redemption, our actions, our guilt, and our compassion all we wait, not just in stories, but in life. Personally, I sometimes think that's why we're drawn to these stories, because we all carry regrets, hopes, and questions about what lies beyond. And maybe that longing for peace, the hope that what's broken can be made whole again, is something all of us share.